Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff Nickel, and I have Miss America here, and Gaston, the white fuzzy guy, and Tony, he'll be up on the table in just a minute. Do you have a handyman dog, or handy girl dog? Those are the ones who do odd jobs around the house and then make a bolt for the door. This isn't really that much fun, is it? I mean, cats and dogs, well, they're men's and women's best friends, but the bloom can leave the rose when when you're living in a latrine and your pets are too. And it's miserable for everybody. I mean, who wants stool and urine in their house? The hassle of cleaning it up, the smell, well, it's stressful for the pets too, because they are innately programmed not to pass stool and urine, not to eliminate in their living area. So there's a real problem when this happens, and there are real solutions for it. Frustration, let's try to get past that and look at real solutions. Carolyn Nickel is watching. Excellent. She's my director and producer. I do Facebook Lives pretty much every week. I was fly fishing in northern New Mexico at the Rio Costilla last weekend, catching the elusive brown and, actually the rainbow and cutthroat trout. And actually there's been a mix between those two species, interestingly, because the cutthroat is native, the rainbow was introduced, and now we get some fish that are a mix, and they're called cutbows. They're trying to eliminate that and get back to Mother Nature, which of course is the right way to do things in the wilderness. Anyway, so I'm going to be talking today about house soiling and pets and what we need to do about it. But if you like this post, if you find things about what I'm talking about that are helpful to you and to your friends and their pets, hit the wow button, hit the heart. And if you have any questions, and it doesn't have to be about house soiling pets, and we're specifically talking about dogs this time, although there are a few cat points that I'll make, by all means interject the question. And if you've got some friends, of course, this is going to be posted on my Facebook page, and you certainly can refer people to it. And Cynthia, thank you for tuning in. I'm glad to have you again. I appreciate it. So, what are we going to do about this thing? Well, it is such a frustrating behavior, and it's not the only one that is, that people want it to stop like 10 minutes ago, and their focus is on, the behavioral symptom, the stool and the urine. And it isn't very often that you catch a pet in the act of doing it. And if you're going to punish, by its definition, punishment has to occur immediately following the undesirable behavior, every single time that undesirable behavior occurs. And it's got to be strong enough to get the message across, but not so strong that it scares the pet. Well, punishment is almost never useful. And the reason is, how often can you catch a pet doing the wrong thing every single time? And especially with house soiling. And part of the reason for that is that when they urinate or defecate in the house, and they do get punished, they learn very quickly that the mistake is eliminating when my person is nearby. And so their takeaway lesson is that when I need to go, I just wait until they're out of the room. Some pets, some dogs in particular, will be sitting on the floor resting while their people are watching TV in the evening, for example, or answering email. And they sneak off to another room, they eliminate in there, and then they come back. Because as far as they're concerned, there is never a punishment when their person is not nearby. And so it's completely a fine behavior when their person isn't there. Well, obviously this is the wrong message, but that's how they come away with the lesson of getting punished. So punishment really should be off the table. And another point is, and you still find people who do this because they believe it's the right thing, they'll come home and they'll find the stool or the urine and they'll haul the pet over to it by the collar, and they'll whack him on the rear end with a newspaper while they push their nose in the stool or the urine. Well, there is nothing to be learned from this except that my person doesn't really love me, in fact scares the daylights out of me. And we sometimes find dogs who become fearful, defensive, aggressive toward their person who they actually still love, because they don't know what else to do. They can't leave. They can't leave that social group and join another one because, there are walls that hold the roof up on that house. They can't get out. There's a fence around it. They're essentially trapped. And they are not programmed for that. They are genetically wired to live in a free-living social group, as much as they belong with us and they're domestic pets for sure, but they are they're programmed to, gee, if this isn't working out, as much as I hate to do it, I can create distance and come back later, or actually leave the group and join another one. And so our domestic pets, well, they are owned by us, really, aren't they? And they can't leave if they want to. So we've got a very strong obligation to treat the cause of the problem and treat it with kindness. If you've ever had a time in your life when you were a child and you looked up to a parent who treated you badly, repeatedly, and frankly, beat the snot out of you, physically and emotionally, because you didn't know what else to do. You didn't understand how to do the right thing. You didn't understand what the lesson was they were doing maybe what they thought was right, and it was very damaging. Well, think about pets being members of a different species, and they can learn the wrong lesson if they're busted for eliminating inside. So what we're going to focus on is actually abandoning the behavior we don't want, and with kindness and empathy for their confusion, we're going to teach them what the right thing is. So with that preamble, let's look for some of the causes, because in medicine, I don't care whether we're treating liver disease, pneumonia, heart failure, cancer, we always look for the cause. We're not just going to focus on the symptom. So the causes, well, I mean, what's that going to be in some cases? Well, some dogs are so darn anxious. There may be another household dog that's bullying them, scaring the daylights out of them, doesn't let them through the door, dog door or regular door, corners them, bullies them. Is that scared dog? They may not be able to get out of the house without risk, or they may be so scared that they can't even think about what the right thing is. So anxiety, tension, fear, those can be big factors. But there are other reasons why some dogs will do it. Some are elderly and they have painful arthritic joints and they just have a hard time getting in and out. There may be kidney failure, diabetes, other diseases that cause so much urine production that they just can't get out fast enough to empty that frequently filled up bladder. And you know, there could be other factors in the home. Sometimes there is tension in a home. When people come into my consultation office with a pet with urination problems or fecal soiling, I get to know these folks and talk to them and just listen to them, and I come to learn that there's real domestic problems. It doesn't have to be domestic violence, not physical violence, but it can be a lot of emotional violence, a lot of yelling and dysfunction, and crowding. I had a case recently, folks doing God's work by fostering pets, have as many as 8 or 10 dogs at a time, all the time looking for new homes for them, and the stable members of that canine group are just crowded, and one dog more easily will bully another when there's so much tension going on that none of these dogs have the social skills to cope with it, in part because they've been through several homes, and they were fosters who were kept. And so these dogs, as much as these folks can do everything possible to set these pets up for success, can actually have a problem that they don't fully recognize because they're focused on helping these pets out. Oh, well, there are ways of mitigating this and working with it, but we are obliged to understand the underlying causes and manage those, and then when the pets feel better, they can actually learn. It's really hard to learn something when you're freaked out all the time. Cindy and Richard, excellent. I'm glad you folks are here. So, separation anxiety, by the way, can do it. I think I mentioned that. So, physical causes, other than what's going on in the brain, a very physical organ itself, physical causes are essential to understand those first. So if you've got a pet who's eliminating indoors, needs to go to see his general practicing veterinarian. Urinalysis, essential. There's some smoldering infection, bladder stones. In cats in particular, they're more likely to show up on x-ray. And careful palpation of that bladder, and a rectal exam. Is there thickening and swelling in that rectum? Are those anal glands enlarged? That can cause a fecal urgency. And they're very simple to fix, by the way, and it's not a behavior problem at all. So a blood profile as well. If there are kidney problems, diabetes, liver disorders, you know, what else is going on? And a back exam, because spinal lesions, whether they're caused by an injury or a spinal disorder, can certainly cause neurologic inadequacy, insufficiency of the nerves that supply the neck of the bladder, and that dog may not be able to control its urine flow. And another thing, 20% of spayed female dogs, and in our culture, in our country, the vast majority of female dogs are spayed. People are doing the right thing to prevent overpopulation of pets. This border collie right here, Miss America, would you sit up and let people see you because you're so darn cute? This girl here, I spayed her myself. She was about 6 months old. And a couple of years ago, she started leaking urine in her bed when she was sleeping. 20% of spayed female dogs do that. And it's very responsive to treatment. There's a couple of great medications. They're not expensive. They're quite safe. So don't assume you have a house training problem. And don't ever think your dog is trying to spite you. Maybe she really wanted that shiny new Corvette for her birthday and all she got was a used tricycle. Well, that can cause, nothing. It's a dog, and they don't think that way. That kind of envy and spite and resentful behavior and petulance, that's human ego-based stuff. That's on our species. These guys actually live in the moment. So don't ever believe that your dog is trying to, get back at you and stick a needle in you while you're gone. That is not what's happening. So you can lose any resentment you have toward your dog. These problems are fixable, and they're not about the dog hating your guts in secret. Okay, right, girlfriend? Okay, so what are we going to do about this thing? Well, if we've ruled out everything else, if your general practitioner has checked a blood sample and a urine sample and evaluated the spine, the bladder, the rectum, the anal glands, everything's checked out, and you've got a dog who's urine soiling, and you've been to a veterinary behaviorist, or at least a veterinarian who has done some training, has some special interest in behavior. You don't have to do a full residency like I have done to become a specialist. You can have a general practitioner in your area who says, look, I'm interested in behavior. I understand the importance of it, and evaluate your dog for anxiety-related problems. Sometimes medications and other behavior modifiers are valuable in that. We've got that off the table. Let's talk about rehouse training, because there are some dogs who just weren't adequately trained at the beginning. You did what you thought worked, taking the puppy out often when it needs to go and telling it's a good dog. But let's talk about a real structure for a dog who just never caught the concept. And it's called a 3-step method. And the first step is called one-day house training. I've got a question here from Cynthia. We have 4 dogs, and there are females, and Boston is a male. Boston keeps going to the bathroom in the house. Of course, the 3 females were spayed, and the Boston is neutered. How can I get the Boston to go to the bathroom outside when we got him, the female dogs, to go outside? All right, let me digress briefly, and let's go after that Boston situation. Some dogs are urine soilers inside, and some male dogs are urine markers inside, occasionally in a female, almost always a male. And when they mark new objects you bring in, sometimes people go to the store and they put a bag of groceries on the floor, and the male dog urine marks on it, or any new or unfamiliar item. Sometimes these dogs just have to urine mark. This can be anxiety related, but it can be occurring in a dog who is otherwise behaviorally fine and physically fine, and they just have this bad habit. Well, if we give a medication that boosts the neurotransmitter serotonin, such as fluoxetine, which is Prozac, we can diminish that male-related behavior, and that can do it. There are supplements that can do the same job, St. John's wort, and the supplement 5-HTP, which is a precursor for the neurotransmitter serotonin. Hello, Tony. I'm glad you showed up. Good to see you here. So those kinds of things can help. But it also may be a house training problem. So let's talk about house training. Now, one-day house training is a method that was developed by a PhD behaviorist, not a veterinary behaviorist. These folks, while they're not medically trained and cannot prescribe medications for anxiety and those kinds of behavior disorders, bring a great deal to the table. They do a lot of the valuable research that we base our diagnoses and treatment plans on. So anyway, this Dr. Ian Dunbar, PhD in animal behavior, developed one-day house training. Now, it's meant for puppies. And if you get a new puppy, 8, 10, 12 weeks old, you can house train that rascal in 1 day. Get the whole job done right. If you have an adult dog who's confused and needs to be re-house trained, you can still use the 1 day method, but it's best repeated 3 or 4 or even 5 days, ideally consecutively. And it's a simple structure, and they get the point. So you take your puppy or your adult dog, and you put it in, rather than a crate, I prefer a small room, like a big walk-in closet or a guest bathroom. A lot of houses nowadays have a small bathroom downstairs near the public area of the house. And you take all the towels and the little fuzzy cover on the seat lid of the toilet and all that stuff out of there, and you give that dog something really enjoyable to work on, like a rawhide, or you can use a food dispensing toy like a Kong or a Twist and Treat. And in fact, if that dog doesn't have access to food out of a bowl that day, and they are required to extract and manipulate that toy to get that food out of there, they can do something the dogs are just pre-wired to do instinctively, and that is to forage. Because as much as they are predators, and in the wild they'll eat what they kill, truth is they don't get that lucky every day. Most of the time they're eating carrion. I mean, it's just dead stuff. So you're not going to put roadkill in your guest bathroom for your puppy to work when you house train. But that manipulating of where the food is and that working to get it loose, that comes quite naturally to them. So you put your dog in there it's food motivated, hasn't had food from a bowl, got food in the food dispensing toy or puzzle, and it's going to stay in there 1 hour at a time. So day 1 of 1 day house training, first thing you do, you get out of bed and you take your dog outside to the yard, to the place where you want her to go, or him, and you wait, and a few minutes. And if the dog defecates or urinates, you can give a big party, you can give a food reward. That really isn't the programmed reinforcer, because in the wild, in a free-living canine social group, that's not what happens when they do that right thing. When they go to the perimeter of their territory and they eliminate, their leader wants them doing that. And what that dog earns as a reinforcer for that good behavior in their mind and in the wild is the privilege of leaving the territory to go out and sniff and investigate and read the bulletin boards and post a few messages of their own. And so that's the reward you give your dog. So be ready for that. You get up in the morning, put the leash on your dog, go out to your yard where you prefer him or her to go. And if they do either function, you say, good dog, and immediately leave the yard and go for a walk outside your yard. And that's important because other dogs have been there. And they pick up not only their scent, but communications via these pheromone-like substances that are secreted between their foot pads. That's a real important thing for this highly social species, which is why dogs love to go for walks. Sure, they like the exercise, but it's the social nature of it. Even if they don't see another dog, it's social because it's communication. So the dog has earned that privilege by eliminating in the yard. So it doesn't have to be a long walk, a few minutes, 5 minutes, plenty. So you bring your dog back home, and it goes immediately back into that small area, that guest bathroom, for an hour. So you check your watch, an hour later, you go back in there, put the leash on your dog, go back out to that same spot in the yard, and if she eliminates again, stool or urine, that's wonderful. Immediately earns another trip off territory to do that same thing. I mean, they really can't do it enough. It's that important to them. Then you come back home, go back in that room for another hour, opportunity to extract food, and every hour you do this all day long until bedtime. And of course, some of those times you lead your dog out to the dumping ground in your yard. They don't need to go. Well, it's no big deal. You give her a few minutes, or him, and if he doesn't go, just go back inside to the room. Spend another hour. That's it. And again, if it's a brand new puppy, usually works just that quickly. An adult dog needs lots of repetition because they've got this bad old habit they've repeated hundreds, maybe thousands of times. So you've done this. If it's an adult dog, you've done it 3 or 4 times, maybe 5, ideally in a row. And then you go to phase 2 of house training, which is the close tethering phase. And what this is all about is that you use a 6-foot or longer leash, not 15 or 20 feet, maybe 6 or 12 feet long. You can get a lightweight carabiner that you can attach to your belt, snap the handle into that. You know, these little clips, these little aluminum clips you can get at the check stand of the drugstore, for example, got a little spring-loaded little latch, and people carry keys on their belt, or women use them on their purse for, their keys or something else. These things are easy to find. So anyway, you snap the handle of the leash into this thing on your belt, and your dog is with you all the time when you're indoors, or somebody in your family. And then, of course, you say, gee, it's been an hour or two since you've been outside, girlfriend. So then you take her outside, and if she goes, again, you can tell her she's good or tell him he's good, but the real reinforcer every time consistently is that jaunt off property. And reinforcement is just like punishment in the sense that it works if it's immediate, okay, and every single time, consistency. So again, punishment, almost impossible to do it every single time. Reinforcement, you can. You take your dog out there and he does the right thing, bingo, he immediately gets the reinforcer of that social jaunt off property. Again, even if he doesn't see another dog, it's a social experience. Okay? So, this is the close tether phase, and we do this for about 2 weeks. Well, essential to this whole process is that there is no way for your dog to make an unsupervised error. No way. We are abandoning that old behavior. So, during the several days of one-day house training in an adult dog, what do you do when the dog's not in that small room or getting an opportunity to earn the privilege of a jaunt-off territory? Well, you can put that dog in its crate, or you can leave it in the yard. Too few people leave their dogs outside. If their dog has a shelter from the direct sun and the weather, and fresh, cool water in the shade, there isn't any reason in the world most dogs can't spend the day outside. And of course, can't make an indoor mistake if the dog's outside, right? Yeah, you can crate your dog, but that shouldn't be for more than a few hours at a time, okay? So during the close tethering phase 2 of this whole thing, hey, you gotta go to work, right? So dog can stay outside when you're not at home, or somebody else isn't in the home, or in its crate if you need to, for a few hours at a time. And again, I insist on allowing a dog to be a dog, to focus her brain or his brain on canine-specific behavioral opportunities, which means foraging. They're supposed to have the mild stress every day of wondering, how the heck am I going to survive another day? Well, by foraging, okay? Unless you're going to get a bunch of rabbits and rodents loose in your house so your dog can really hunt. We don't do that at our place. You give them something very much like a foraging opportunity, which is a food dispensing toy or puzzle, right, girlfriend? So then your dog has got no opportunity to make a mistake. So we've got close tethering for a couple of weeks, taking your dog out every couple of hours, give her an opportunity to earn that great privilege. And you say, you know what? I think she's got it. She's earned it all these times. She had that structure with the one-day method. She's got the close tethering for at least a couple of weeks. Phase 3. And phase 3 is what I call the stealth method. And what you do then is you unclip the tether, the leash, from your belt, and you drop it on the floor at a time when you think, this is probably when this dog's going to need to go. And so you have your sneakiest sneakers or your ballet slippers or maybe you're barefoot, and you let your dog drag that leash off, and you watch, and you sneak along very, very surreptitiously, and you see what your dog is doing. And if she squats or he squats or hikes his leg, that's when you can correct. But don't go overboard, for crying out loud. People think that they've busted the crime of the century. It's only a mistake, for crying out loud. So you step on the leash, and you can use a firm tone. You can say, Gaston, no, if Gaston were a dog. And you pick up the leash and head back outside to the regular elimination place. And if he goes or she goes, wonderful. She just earned a jaunt off property. And if she doesn't, I would take her out for a jaunt off property anyway. And then you say, well, all right, didn't quite work. Why don't we do another week of close tethering? And if you try the stealth method again and it still doesn't work, then repeat a day or two of one-day house training, and then a couple of weeks of close tether training, and then try the third phase, the stealth method again. Now this is time-consuming. It's a lot of work. You want the shortcut? Well, you could have done one-day house training for one day when the puppy was 8 or 10 or 12 weeks, but that window is closed. That train has left the station, And so we're going to play the hand we're dealt. But if we know that every organ system in this dog's body is healthy and it's confusion up in this organ, then we need a structure and make it fair to the dog so they can earn reinforcers, which is what dogs are all about. You know, they love us. But the people who believe that the dog should just do stuff to please their person, they're not clear on the concept. And that is, the dogs look to their leaders to control their access to all resources, which is not just food. It's access to areas outside the territory to sniff and investigate. And it's also the earned privilege of interaction and affection. And you can do all of that you want with your dog, more than you've ever done, is ideally if your dog earns it. So you can find, by the way, all of this stuff on my website, drjeffnicol.com, drjeffnicol.com. There's no S on my name. And you'll find everything we just discussed is all laid out for you. You know what really is so valuable to your relationship with your dog, so that that dog is set up for success and also set up for a peaceful, relaxed life, security, knows who the boss is, they do anyway. Don't believe this foolishness about dogs trying to dominate their person. That's exceptionally rare. Your dog isn't trying to spite you, mess with you. Your dog wants to do the right thing and earn privileges and reinforcers from you. It just needs a message that a dog can understand. And so that's the fundamental behind this concept. Now, I've got another question here. This information is so helpful. Thank you, Cindy. You're always so nice to tell me when I've done the job right. You give me positive reinforcers, by the way. It works for me, too. So I think that's really my message. I just want everybody to know that this kind of behavior help is, well, I can do it. I'm trained at it. My practice is now limited to behavior disorders. After over 40 years in general medicine, treating accidents and injuries and illnesses, and building up my behavior practice during my residency training, this is all I do anymore. And my website is just full of great information. And I encourage you to subscribe. You can go to my website, again, drjeffnicol.com, drjeff, and you can click on the subscribe button. There's a window that comes up, or you can go down to the bottom of the homepage, and you can subscribe, which costs nothing. And when you do, just as a thank you, I'll send you my free at-home pet first aid and CPR guide. And every Tuesday morning, you'll get my media, which is really my newspaper column from the Albuquerque Journal from the previous week, where I answer questions on cats and dogs. Half of it's on physical stuff, half of it is on behavior concerns. And you'll have also this Facebook Live will show up in your email feed every Tuesday morning. So if you miss these great sessions, you can get them on Tuesday morning. This one will be on Tuesday mornings. And share this stuff with your friends. And I hope this kind of thing makes a difference, not only in your pets' lives, but in yours too. Because I'll tell you what, I come home after a hard day. I have a wonderful family that includes Miss America, the family border collie, Gaston, and Tony the gray fellow, who somehow snuck off on us again. Those cats come and go any way they want. But these pets mean so much because there's something about the friendship with them that's different than a human friendship. It's, you know, things that they provide that our species just doesn't. And so, you know, I've always had pets in my life. And when I was a kid growing up and things got real hard, I had my dog. Boy, that kind of thing, it's still part of my life. So thanks for tuning in, and I'm delighted to see you. And thank you for those hearts. Have a great evening.